Hello everyone and welcome back to the Blaise XPerience once again. You are joining us for a big episode today. Today is episode number 50. And it's great that we've actually made it to 50, and I really appreciate everyone that's been with us in this journey. You know, back in March when I started this, I didn't think I'd be getting to 50 this fast, but, you know, I actually upped our episode count to 2 a week, and, you know, we just kept trucking along, and here we are at number 50. So it's definitely a great milestone, and I'm really proud of that milestone. And if you listened to the last episode, I did mention a contest, which I'll re-mention real quick. So to celebrate our 50th episode, I am doing a giveaway. I'm going to give away a code for the Daybreak DLC for State of Decay 2 and the Independence Pack for State of Decay 2 as well. So one winner will win both of those codes. And basically to enter that, all you have to do is give me a review on iTunes. You can follow me on Twitter or retweet any podcast tweets on Twitter. Or you can subscribe on YouTube or join the Discord. So those are the main ways you can do that, and you can be entered. So I will draw the winner for that at the end of the month. So that'll run to the end of the month. In addition, we do have a couple other news items. Our next stream will likely be on Tuesday before noon. And that's going to be next week. I also will probably be doing a celebration stream tonight when this releases. It's going to release on a Saturday. So I'll mention that I'll probably be doing a celebration stream tonight to celebrate the Zed Hunter pack. We'll get into that a little bit later, but that's the new pack that's releasing for State of Decay 2. And then our next podcast, I will mention today that next Wednesday we won't have a podcast. Every month I do 1 week of the month that I kind of have Wednesday off, so that will be the Wednesday that I don't do a podcast. So we will resume the Wednesday podcast on 11/28. And basically the next episode you're going to hear after this one is going to be next Saturday. So a week from today will be another State of Decay 2 podcast. So we're going to have a break of a week, basically. But without further ado, that's our news items for today. So we do have a very special guest with us today for episode 50. It's someone that actually is at Undead Labs. Today we have my former Undead Trials partner and also a programmer at Undead Labs. Please welcome to the podcast, Jorgen. How are you, Jorgen?
Hi, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, and thank you for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here.
We definitely had a lot of fun in Undead Trials, and I'm glad you could join me for this too.
Yeah, we could have maybe done a little better, but now that I have some more practice, maybe we have to try it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think we will do a lot better, because, I mean, now that you have those minefields, you know, that's going to make all the difference for us. So.
I hope so.
And we also did charity streams for Extra Life, too, and that went really well, and I'm really happy with how that went. I think we earned like $2,600, something like that, so that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of participation from, all community members and from employees at Undead Labs, and I was really happy to see them come together, put in the time to contribute and fundraising all that money for charity. It was great.
Absolutely, and if anyone still wants to donate, I believe you can still donate till the end of the year, so I will still have the donation link in the show notes, so you can still donate, but I think in just the week we were running events, we earned that in just about a week. So that's pretty good for just about a week. And hopefully, some more people earn more.
Absolutely.
So your early career, what kind of games did you like as a kid? What kind of games kind of got you into gaming?
I think the first games that I put a lot of time into were the RTS genre of things. And so I have fond memories of playing Settlers 1 and 2, playing Monkey Island on the Amiga. The first kind of serious amount of gameplay I did was on an Amiga. And Dune 2 is one of the games that really have stuck with me through the ages. Also Doom, that I played with my brother. We had a serial link kind of connection between the computers in our attic. And he would, my brother, he knew of secret places in the Doom maps where you could look out but not in. There were like these one-way walls, and for the longest time he would hide there, and he wouldn't tell me how to get in there because you had to find a secret wall to get up there. And so for the longest time he wouldn't tell me how to do it. It was brutal, but I think I played a lot of different things. There was also kind of JRPGs, Suikoden 2 and Secret of Mana, those kinds of games. It's been a pretty long, pretty broad selection of games that brought me to that. But I think the first moment I had where I was thought of game development as a career was when I played Half-Life 1. I think a lot of people had that too, but it was such a powerful kind of experience. Like I was scared out of my mind playing that game. I was pretty young and sitting home alone in the dark and just waiting for like head crabs to come jumping out at you. It was a pretty terrifying moment. And I think that's kind of when it crystallized for me that some people are making these games and it's having this kind of profound emotional impact on me as a player. Like that sounds amazing. Like being able to
Absolutely.
do that. So that's the thing. Where it all started.
Yeah, I'm definitely someone that's susceptible to like those kind of jump scare things. I mean, I do like a lot of like scary movies and things like that, but I'm not really scared by the movie itself, but I'm definitely susceptible to the jump scare. Anything that jumps out at me like, whoa, that definitely gets me.
And it's interesting because I'm not a big fan of jump scares in general. Like when it comes to like movies and things like that, I think I'd rather just not watch it if it's going to have a lot of jump scares in it. It doesn't like, it's not an enjoyable feeling for me, but for some reason the kind of I think it was a lot of the tension in playing Half-Life 1 where there's a lot of anticipation of what's going to happen, and there are some jump scares in there, but it was just kind of that whole emotional journey of that
right, kind of the tension basically.
Yeah, anticipation of what was going to happen, and knowing that you'd have to, like, these aren't scares that you can't do anything about. They're not like horror movie bad guys that are basically impossible to kill.
Right, exactly.
Like you can overcome all of these challenges, but it's gonna be kind of a hectic when you do. So.
And I can definitely relate to what you were saying with your brother too. I mean, it was basically the same situation with my brothers, kind of. I mean, it wasn't like invisible walls or anything, but I remember back when we were playing the first Halo and the second Halo. They were, kind of just growing up still. They didn't really know what they were doing. So I just like bring them in a map. I'm like, hey, let's play this map. And I knew all the spots and I just go around killing them. And it was kind of fun for me, but it probably wasn't fun for them.
Yeah. I take it you have younger siblings.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I have 3 older siblings. I'm youngest of 4. So I think I was pretty used to being picked at by that point.
Yeah, so you were on their end. I was kind of the, one just go, they don't know what they're doing. Let me just, bring them this map and let's just shoot them.
Yeah.
But eventually, I'll give them credit. Eventually, they actually, got better than me. So I'm like, dang, this isn't good anymore.
Oh, you gotta find a new game now.
Exactly. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah,
so that was fun. Yeah, I mean, the younger you are nowadays, it seems like, the more you know games at an early age. So.
Yeah, no, I don't. For the most part, when you ask me to participate in a competition, I don't feel like I'm competitive anymore. I like playing games, right. But I used to, we had a lot of LAN parties when I was younger. We'd get together, bring our computers into a shared space and play games over the network. And I used to play like Quake 3 pretty solidly, and in our social circle, I was doing pretty well. And we played Warcraft 3 a lot, like about when it was like out in beta and stuff like that. We were, competing with other people online and stuff like that. So there was a point in time where like I spent enough time and had like wanted to compete, so strongly that it was actually at a decent level. But these days, I feel like there are too many games and there's too many other things to do. So I don't have enough hours in the day to invest to get good anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of the same for me. I mean, I try to put as much time as I can into, the games I play, but I don't have the hours to be on an esports level ever. I mean, I could never do that. So I still have fun competing when I can. I mean, especially shooters though, don't ever ask me to win anything to shooter because I can't do shooters for crap. So I'm horribly bad at shooters.
I think I also hit like when RTS gaming got pretty serious, like StarCraft and Warcraft 3 and things like that. I realized that there was kind of a cap to my competitiveness where like the level of micro that people have at competitive levels for those games was just like, I don't think I'm ever going to get to that point, and that's fine.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like a lot of co-op games, like State of Decay, for example, because it's not so much competitive. Like, you can make your own little competitive things, but it's more for fun. It's not like you're actually competing. You know, it's not like, you're killing each other. You're competing against the other things in the world, which I do like that.
Yeah. I think, in terms of multiplayer games that I play, things that are cooperative, in the vein of kind of like Destiny and things like that. I've played some where it's like you're all kind of trying to achieve the same goal, or if it's kind of shorter session-based games, like if I want to play a competitive game, I want it to be kind of over quickly. There's no fun in me to lose for a long, long time. So I was really excited when Heroes of the Storm came out because I've sunk a lot of hours into Dota 2, and it was, for me, Heroes of the Storm fixed some of the problems that I like that Dota 2 had to me, which was like, I don't want to get stuck in a 90-minute match that I'm losing anyway. So
that wouldn't be fun at all.
So Dota Heroes of the Storm, is matches are more in the 10 to 20-minute range, and so you can kind of sit down and play, and it allows the rest of your life to exist alongside it, and you can kind of, if it's going badly, you're like, well, it's only like 5 more minutes and it's fine.
Right, I think that's the appeal for some games like the battle royales and things that are out now, because you can play some short matches in a short amount of time. So say you only have like, I just got home from work, I only have an hour before dinner. You could jump into a couple battle royale games and get that done. I mean, it's not where you have to have a huge time sink. So I think that's why they're kind of more popular right now.
Yeah,
at least partially.
I did play Fortnite the other day for the first time, and I just got trounced, just destroyed and I was like, I'm just getting in there and getting killed, and I'm like, this is actually not fun for me. I'm just going to uninstall this game. I think I played it for like 15 minutes, and I was like, nah, we're done.
The only thing I'm good at in Fortnite is hiding, honestly. Like, I can probably make it to, the top, tier of the game, but that's only because I hid. Like, I can't actually kill anyone, so I can just go around the map and be like, oh, there's a person, let me duck in this house real quick.
Yeah.
But hey, technically that's a valid tactic. I mean, I still survived, so.
Yeah, I mean, their scoring mechanism is built around it, so.
Exactly, so. I mean, theoretically, if I survived to the final 2 by hiding and then I killed one person, I win. So theoretically, I could win that way.
Yeah, no. I do find that in terms of competitive games, I'm more likely to play things that are kind of hot seat or like local multiplayer games. Have some friends will sit down and just gather around a big TV and play something silly for a while. Or even like cooperative, semi-cooperative games like Overcooked and things like that. That's kind of like you get kind of that sense of community or sense of like, it's more of a fun kind of social experience than if you're playing with some anonymous stranger on the internet, So
absolutely. And unfortunately, I can't play a lot of local co-op anymore because I moved away from where I originally was, so I don't have a lot of people I can play with locally here, but I mean, that's the beauty of online multiplayer now, is I can play with friends online, so that is nice.
Yeah, I know people who set up like a Discord channel and then get together like once a month or once every couple of weeks with some friends that they used to live with, like live nearby, and then have their kind of multiplayer experience together in that sense. I used to, the same thing I think is like true for games like World of Warcraft, where there's like a really strong sense of community, strong sense of group, but it's a pretty social experience, and so people get together and do a raid or whatever. It's not just anonymous strangers on the internet anymore.
Yeah, see, Warcraft's one I've never actually gotten into, and it's more because I thought I would like it too much and invest too much time in it, so I kind of stayed away from it.
Yeah, I was young and naive when I played it when it came out, and so saved a lot of hours into that. But it's been a while.
So. I'm like, no, I'm going to be playing like all my life on this from what I hear, so I'm just going to stay away, just, save some of my life away.
It's probably a good choice.
But yeah, you mentioned Half-Life 1 was basically what kind of got you into the mindset of going for a gaming career. So why did you choose programming? What made you say, okay, I want to be a programmer instead of I want to be a game designer, I want to be an artist, or all the other careers that are out there?
So those were kind of independent decisions. Like, they didn't really have anything to do with each other. I always enjoyed, like even before that moment, I enjoyed programming, and I, you know, would do scripting and things like that to kind of create tools for myself when I was, from a young age, and it's always something that I enjoyed. And as I kind of was getting ready to go to college, people told me that I shouldn't pursue programming in college because it was such a big hobby for me. It's something that I enjoyed doing on my spare time, and if I had a career in it, I would no longer enjoy it as a hobby. And so, listening to the wisdom of my elders, I took that as gospel, and I enrolled in a electrical engineering degree in college, thinking that it was related as a field, even if
Right.
it wasn't the same. And I was hoping that would kind of be my saving grace, that I would not burn out on programming, because I would be doing electrical engineering instead. What actually happened was that in college, I think I was in electrical engineering 2 years, year and a half. And I would just, whenever I had choices for classes, I would always pick kind of the digital electronics classes, which are, for those who don't know too much about electrical engineering, those are the classes that are as close as you can get to programming from the hardware side of things, from like the circuits. And so I always chose those classes, and I did better in those classes than I did in the kind of analog electronics and the more signal processing and things like that. And so finally, I just admitted it, and I was like, you know what, I want to do programming. Like, why am I like wasting my time trying to find something else? And so I switched majors to programming. But it wasn't really with the goal of doing video game programming, because everyone told me, in the same vein that everybody told me that I would be unhappy if I did programming for a living, everybody told me that the games industry was a terrible place to work, and that you really shouldn't do that to yourself. So, yeah.
Jeez, you got told a lot of stuff back then.
I mean, they meant well, but
no,
yeah.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It definitely shaped, I think, how I chose my career and what direction I went in. Some of this, was from like people of my parents' generation, friends of the family, and things like that, and some of it was from my own peers, and that had maybe done. I spoke to some people who had done QA for larger studios and things like that, and it was like, the games industry, it's terrible. And at the time too, I think it was worse than it is these days. Historically, there's been a lot of kind of crunch and poor work balance and unrealistic expectations of employees. It's something that's been plaguing the games industry for a long time.
No, absolutely. I definitely understand, kind of what you're going through a little bit, because I switched my majors myself in college, and not only that, I kind of had the same pressures, socially, that, oh, well, what you want to do, that might not be good. You should go for this more stable thing. And it's like, okay, I'll go for that. So like, you kind of, end up thinking, okay, maybe I should go for this more stable thing. But then you realize, no, wait, this isn't what I want to do. So
yeah, I mean, at some point, you gotta make sure that you're doing something for you. That's gonna make you happy.
Exactly.
But I think so. Like, kind of the thing that actually changed it was that my first job out of college was at a company called NVIDIA that does graphics cards, and so it was, to me, like the classes I took in college, some of them were pretty interesting, from like graphics programming and things like that, and game programming. They were interesting topics, and NVIDIA seemed like a company where I could do something that was adjacent to that was similar, that had a lot of similarities to game programming, but that didn't have the burden of being, quote unquote, the games industry. And I mean, that's actually how I ended up in the games industry too, was spending time at NVIDIA, and then, really enjoying the work that I did there, and then switching to just like a mobile security startup in San Francisco. But when I was there, I was reading the news about how Valve was backing Linux and was focusing on that, and that they had a programmer from NVIDIA who was working on site with them to help them, optimize their performance and to help improve the NVIDIA graphics driver and things like that, which is exactly what I worked on. I worked on the Linux graphics driver when I was at NVIDIA. And so I saw that piece of news, and I was like, you know what? Like, of all the things I've heard of the games industry, everybody says that Valve is a really good company to work for. And so I reached out to the people I used to work with. I was like, hey, do you know who it is that traveled up to Valve to help them with their graphics driver? And it turned out to be somebody that I had worked with directly. He's a great guy, and he's very involved in the Linux gaming community. And so I reached out to him, and he got me in touch with the people who were running that team. And so that's why I joined Valve, was to help them with porting their games to Mac and Linux, and to work on kind of Steam for Linux projects.
No, that's really cool that you actually kind of got your start that way too. And that's kind of what it seems like, it sounds like from a lot of people in the industry, is that they kind of got their start by, knowing this person who kind of, gave them a little bit of a push. Is that usually how it starts out, you think?
I've definitely heard a lot of stories like that. I do know that, for example, there are some people we hire that we work with in some capacity, either as kind of like a contractor, where we're not sure how well this person is going to work out, and we hire them on as a contractor, and then as we kind of see how they work, we might say, okay, we'll give you a full-time offer. But I do see a lot of people get hired because, they have worked with somebody in the past and they have a positive relationship. I think in some ways it's problematic. I think the games industry as an industry has a huge diversity problem. I think that applies to pretty much every company that I've worked at and that I've heard of. It's just that there's a lot of white dudes. It's a little unhealthy. And I think part of that is because of that exact thing, where it's like, you hire people because those are safe bets, like that's a person that you
right.
Have worked with, or somebody that have worked with and had a positive experience with them. And so it's less of a risk. I think that's kind of how they justify it. And so then a lot of your hiring process becomes hiring those people. And that means that it's harder for people who are, women or minorities to get jobs because they weren't kind of a part of that network to begin with. And getting your first job is usually the hardest. And so that means that a lot of those people can give up because of the just massive amount of friction they get when they're trying to get into the industry, which then reinforces that whole system of you hire those and you have only worked with basically white dudes, and so you're going to hire white dudes.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of a downward spiral that it's hard to fix, basically.
Yeah, I think, at least as long as you kind of rely on hiring longtime veterans and people that are kind of friends of the family in a sense. And you kind of have to revisit how you do your hiring and revisit how you do your recruiting and sourcing to broaden that.
Yeah, I know there's definitely some companies that have been in the news lately that we don't have to get into, but I mean, Riot Games, for example, has definitely been in the news negative way. So
yeah, and I'm glad that there's some focus on it. I think in the Riot
absolutely.
Games case, it's I feel like that went way too far before it was in the news. That's kind of an extreme example. But I'm glad that there's been more focus on it and that people are talking about it, and hopefully people are doing things about it.
I hope so. I mean, we don't have to get into it too much, but I hope there's a change at the top of that company or something to actually kind of have the culture change there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do anything about other people's behavior, but we have been kind of focusing at Undead Labs recently on trying to address, kind of why we have a kind of a relatively low amount of diversity at the company, and trying to think about, what things we do to reinforce that and what we can do to change that.
Yeah, that's definitely good, and that's definitely a good practice to have. But in terms of programming, what would you say in your words that you do as a programmer? So for anyone that is listening that has no idea what a programmer does, what would you kind of tell them you do?
So I've kind of done a few different things in my career around that, but in the most general sense of it, I think that I create building blocks to solve problems, and part of that is figuring out what building blocks are necessary, but I feel like almost everything we do is in service of other disciplines. We create tools for designers to create experiences or to tell stories, and we create tools for 3D modelers and to do artists and UI and UX to kind of express their visions. So that's kind of the very general sense of it. I think there's kind of different levels of it in terms of programming. There's more kind of low-level systems programming, engine programming, where what you're doing is you're kind of creating the framework that it all sits inside. And so you're putting together, you're creating an application that will allow somebody to say, here is a 3D model, show it on the screen, or, here is some scripted logic from a designer, apply it to the characters in the world. So that's kind of the lowest level of it. I've done some of that. And then the other part of it is like more from a gameplay perspective, where you work very directly with, here's a part of the vision of the game that we want to express. And so you might sit down with a designer, and the designer says, I want there to be, I want to kind of reduce the mobility of the player in certain situations so that we can direct them, towards the thing we want them to see. And so that might be things like, okay, hey, how about we add fall damage? Like if you jump off this cliff, you'll take damage, and if this cliff is too tall, you'll die. And then, they can take that and then go, cool, now we can make a level where we use those things where we say, there's a cliff here that's going to kill you if you jump off of it. So we're going to kind of direct you to go a different direction.
Or maybe like in a lot of games where if you move through water, you move slower, something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, some of it is more systemic, where it's like, what, how can the designer affect the world? So in the case of like State of Decay, we have systems that consume resources every day, like your people to eat. You have a system that calculates morale of your community, which is like, hey, do you have enough beds for everyone to sleep in? And, it's about counting that up and doing kind of that bookkeeping. And so those are kind of tools that we put together in collaboration with the designers, and that they can kind of tweak and work with to create an experience that is actually fun and challenging.
And things that like kind of run in the background like that, is it more difficult to create those? Like say, the morale issue or the counting the days per day or something like that. Is that more difficult to create those things in the background that always run?
I find those to be the easier ones. And so I think that the less directly the player interacts with something, the easier it kind of is to do it, because you have more room to kind of fudge things and to, like it's all smoke and mirrors, right? Video games they're all fake. And I mean that not just from the perspective of like, it's not a real experience, but from the sense of like, we're not actually, most games are not trying to simulate reality. They're trying to, create a fun experience. And so, if the user doesn't interact with the customer doesn't interact with it directly, like it's not something where you're fighting hand-to-hand combat or whatever, I can do whatever I want behind the scenes, and you will never tell, right? Like, how we calculate how much food is consumed, or how we do, what the effects of morale are, or how we trigger those things to happen. We have a lot more flexibility with those because it's not something the user interacts with directly. But on the other hand, when they don't do that, you have a different problem of how you present that information to the user, which is it's really important to people's sense of agency in a world where they can feel like they can change things and affect things. They need to be able to understand what's happening, why things are happening, and what things are affecting the state of the world. And so when they're not interacting with it directly, like if you get bit by a zombie, you're like, okay, of course my health went down because I saw the zombie bite me. But
right.
If your food goes down because you had a certain amount of people in the world, and it's not like, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2, the food system there, they have two food systems basically, which is like the character and the community. And so the community system is super opaque, and it's really hard to tell why it goes down and how often it goes down, and kind of what the effect of having low food is. Like, having played that game, those were difficult questions for me to answer. And that speaks to how hard that problem is of kind of communicating a lot of information in a sense that's not overwhelming. But then you have the other food system, which is for the character, which is like you go into your inventory and you hit use on a piece of venison, and the character physically eats it. And
right.
You know that like your character's going to gain weight from doing that. You know that they're going to generate health because they did that, and there's kind of user action that caused it. And so communicating it becomes a lot more. Becomes a lot more implicit. Like it's a part of that action the player is taking. But when it's not, when it's in the background, you kind of have to find venues to communicate that information.
No, it definitely makes sense. And I mean, I know on the streams a couple times there's been people that have asked, and I forget who was actually on the stream at the time, but they said they didn't really want to get into the details because they were talking about how the difficulty ramps up when you go up number of days, and they didn't really want to divulge that because that's supposed to be like more of a background thing. So that could kind of be what you're talking about a little bit.
Yeah, and it is very much like that, and it's interesting that you brought up that example because one of the benefits of us not being super explicit about what causes the difficulty to go up. I think I've actually mentioned it at some point, but maybe it was on the stream or something like that when we were streaming for Extra Life, but I'm not going to repeat it now since evidently that's something we're not sharing. But the benefit of us not being kind of transparent about that particular aspect of it is that people tell their own stories.
Right.
Games are really powerful for that, where you will kind of explain things for yourself. And so same thing comes with like loot distribution, for example. People will make up these rules in their mind of like why they got good loot that time and not this other time, and what they need to do to make sure they get good loot. And the same, with the difficulty, people have like they imagine that these things are causing it. And for example, I've heard that like map move, like you travel instead of K2, you travel to a new map, and the difficulty goes up, which for the record is not true. But that doesn't really matter, and there are reasons for why it feels that way and why people think that's the case. And that's like, I think that's a powerful kind of like tool if you use it intentionally, where people get to kind of build their own narrative for how the systems work under the hood. And as long as it's not inconsistent, like as long as they consistently have that experience, it doesn't really matter that it's not accurate,
Right. I definitely like that it's not out in the open as much because then it allows the player to craft their own story, kind of like you're saying. I mean, and that's part of what State of Decay is supposed to be about is, the player crafting their own story. So I do like that because I think if it was known, okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, that's how you get the difficulty up. If you do, Y, then that's how you get the difficulty down. And basically it would make a situation where players are going to game the system a little bit more, and I don't really want us to be able to game the system as much as possible. So
yeah, there's no way to reduce the difficulty instead of it only goes up.
Well, that's good then.
But we did during testing. I think it was actually pretty late in development too, which is one of the like challenges with a game like State of Decay 2 is that it's such a big game with so many different systems. There's a lot of things that don't become apparent until you're getting pretty close to shipping it, because then everything is kind of starting to settle down, and you're like, maybe you were hoping another system would help communicate information to the player or solve, some kind of pressure or things like that. Like maybe you were expecting one of the base systems to apply pressure for the player to go out more often, and so you were kind of relying on that and how you were doing your loot distribution or something like that. And then as things settle, you realize that that's not the case, and you kind of have to start addressing those things. But one of the things we found was that there was a way in which you could make the game really easy by only playing a single character, which was really weird, right? Like it's a game about community, and it's a game about about surviving together, and so we had just never kind of considered how our difficulty mechanic worked if you didn't bring your community or switch characters or do.
And I've actually seen two people try that.
Yeah, well, so we did
Surreal
change
Scotsman
that.
and Mr. Dart both did that. Yeah, so
yeah, I mean now it's actually now it should actually be challenging to do it. But at the time, we hadn't actually considered that somebody would do that. And so when all those systems came together, we were like, oh, we need to address this. This can't
Right.
We can't just leave it like this. So there's a lot of both figuring out what the players are going to want to do, and then figuring out what they expect to happen in response, and then making sure you communicate where those things don't match.
And of course, there's probably somebody listening at home when they listen to this. They're probably like, they're talking about difficulty. What difficulty? There's no difficulty. Like, because there's a contingent of players that it's too easy for them right now. And, to those players, it was announced that sometime early next year, there is going to be something to, hopefully deal with that difficulty problem. And I know you can't talk about it right now, but, it is coming, and I'm excited for that. So
yeah, I am really excited about that too. There's the talk of Zed Hunter, coming out, and it is. I was not that involved in working on Zed Hunter. I had some kind of advisory role on the project, but I didn't actually do any of the work, which means that it's really interesting to me to look at the Zed Hunter DLC now that it's kind of done. We've done internal playtesting and things like that, and to see kind of how cool that has been as it's been coming together. And it's been really exciting to me. But the other side of that is that the thing that I've been working on since I haven't been on Zed Hunter is that I've been working on. Now I'm like, I need to pull up the trailer and look at the actual wording of what it said in the announcement. But we've been talking about how to kind of increase the level of challenge. Does that sound like a approach?
Yeah, I think all that was like phrased was that there would be some sort of potential solution to the difficulty issue. So that's pretty much all that was said. Like, it wasn't anything besides that. Just there's going to be some kind of solution to the difficulty issue. So that's basically all that was said. And then there was announced that Trumbull Valley will be coming sometime next year.
Correct. And so the kind of So that's kind of what I've been working on is the new effort towards giving more options for difficulty for players, and that's something that I'm really excited about. Like, I love it when we get to announce things, like when we have a chance to talk about these things, and there's kind of a lot of decisions that go into whether or not we talk about something, because part of it too is that we do a lot of work internally. It's kind of exploratory, where we're like, hey, let's see if we can do this, and let's see whether we think this would be good, and then, maybe we'll want something along those lines, but we don't know exactly how we're going to package it, or how we're going to brand it, or, what we're going to sell it as, like what sell isn't not necessarily for dollars, but in the sense of like, how do you present this to the customer?
How to market it and stuff, right?
Yeah. And so, it sometimes can be hard to talk about things before we've kind of settled on those things, but it doesn't mean we're not doing the work, right? Like, we're still programming and designing and testing. And so it was really exciting for me to have this XO18 announcement, because I love being able to talk about what I'm doing at work. It's something I'm really excited about. And like you said, there have been people in the community that have not found the game to be as challenging as they would like it to be, which I think that's reasonable. I think that State of Decay 2 being a bigger game in terms of audience than State of Decay 1, there's a lot of focus on making sure that this is a game that anyone can play, right? Like, we want to make sure that there's a broader that we have a broader appeal for the broader fan base that we're reaching now. And I think the other part of it is people are kind of comparing State of Decay 2 at launch with State of Decay 1 after, like, Yos or whatever, which was a game that had been shipped and then kind of iterated on for an entire year, or comparing it to Breakdown and things like that, those weren't available when the game came out, right? So,
right, because those were DLCs in themselves, so that wasn't available at the time. Yeah.
So so I think that we've kind of been listening to that's something that people want. They want to find ways to make the game more challenging. I see people on Reddit who are posting like, here are the rules I play by with to increase the difficulty. Like, I will prevent myself from doing these things. And for the Undead Trials, when we're playing Daybreak, the whole concept was, what are like the most challenging ways for you to beat Daybreak, and
Right.
you scored based on overcoming those challenges. And so, I think that creativity is great, and I think that it's fun to see that stuff, and I think it's some ways it's inspirational too. Like we can look at that stuff and be like, what are the challenges that people find interesting, and what would they want the game to be like if it was harder? But it's definitely it's definitely told us that there's a desire for the ability to challenge himself further, but still play kind of the base game. And so that's what we're exploring right now. We're trying to
Yeah, and I definitely understand that
decide.
too, because I mean, there's players that want more difficulty, and they basically go out there on their own. They create more ways to make it more difficult, but then there's also players that they're not really thinking in those terms, so they're not going to create the new ways. So, like what we did with the Undead Trials, they're not going to think, oh, maybe I could try this, without ever going in front of the wall or something like that. They're not going to think about that option, so they're never going to experience that. So it is nice to have like an actual, difficulty package or whatever is coming shipped that way.
Yeah, and I think that there's a benefit to having the game enforce the rules too, because then you're kind of guaranteeing that you're not violating the rules you're setting down, even unintentionally, and it gives you kind of that, I think, sense of bragging rights where you're like, hey, I did this thing on,
Right, and with achievements too.
I'm trying to find a way to phrase this that doesn't imply that this is a word we're using internally. But I did this with difficulty setting blah. This is how and I still achieved a legacy or whatever. And there's kind of everybody knows what you're talking about when you say that. Then it's an understood concept that everybody shares, which I think is really powerful.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And, I think Undead Labs has been doing a great job listening, and I think, XO18 news definitely proved that, because there was contingent of people that wanted more weapons. Crossbows are coming in the Zeb Hunter pack, along with, some consumables and different ways to play. People want a difficulty option, that is coming. People wanted a new map, that is coming as well. So I think you guys are doing a great job listening to the community.
And I think that it just takes a little bit of time to get all these things done. We want to make sure that we do a good job of them, and that we kind of don't ship something that's half-baked. And I think that it was an unfortunate lull between Daybreak and now, where we hadn't talked about any future plans. Which,
right.
I think honestly part of it too is this Microsoft acquisition has made that a little more challenging too, because there was kind of a period where there's a lot of change in the company, just in terms of for example, how do we pay our bills or things like that, right? It's very concrete things where it's not like it's a bad change or anything, but it's a time of transition where it's we're still figuring out how we fit into the Microsoft organizational
the logistics
structure.
of all that, yeah.
Yeah, and for example, we did a user research test recently, and in the past that's kind of been Microsoft, they were here, access our user research department, because they have an amazing user research department with great staff who really do a great job of figuring out that stuff. But now we're okay, this is the first time we're doing a user research test after we got acquired. So what does that mean? How do we use those resources, and do we get in line? Do we, is there kind of budgeting to it? Is there, how long does it take to get, because they're a service department that works for all of Microsoft, and so yeah, it's been a lot of change, I think, which was kind of added to the lull, basically, where we were not talking about what we were doing because we hadn't kind of settled on that. We had so much other stuff going on. And that's coming. Well, it's getting better now.
And I think one of the things that some people didn't understand, which I tried to convey to as many people as I could, is that basically, pre-launch, it was advertised that there was going to be Independence Pack and Daybreak. So a lot of people, I don't think, understood that, everyone at Undead Labs had to finish those products first because they were already advertised. That was already what was supposed to be coming. So you all didn't have a chance to work on, things that the community wanted until that was done.
Right, yeah. I mean, it was important to us that we delivered kind of on the promises that we made before launch. And so it was, in some ways, I don't want to say I was going to say shackles, but that's maybe not the right phrase. But I think it's good to be free of those expectations. As those expectations were set kind of far in advance of launch while we're still working on the base game and things like that. But now we're kind of over that hump, and we have kind of a lot more freedom in what we present to the community and then what we deliver, because we hadn't made any promises until we talked about Z Hunter and trouble and difficulty on that side. So.
Right, I'm definitely excited for all those. And you did mention that you didn't work a lot on the Z Hunter, and I know when I talked to Jeffrey in episode 33, he mentioned that he didn't work a lot on Daybreak specifically. So is that kind of common in the team where like you all kind of split off into different sectors? Okay, you're going to take this new update, you're going to take this new update. Is that kind of common, or?
Yeah, I think it is kind of how we work. It's I don't think it's necessarily that cut and dry, because I think that we kind of shift around during the process. So, for example, when we started exploratory work on how we're going to address difficulty options in the game, it was just me. Like, I was the only programmer on there. There were, designers and UX people and QA and things like that, but I was the only programmer on there. And then as we've kind of been ramping up that process, we've been adding more people to the kind of team. We could divide into smaller teams. Company's 65 people at this point, and so we divide into smaller teams, and then we tackle. Some of it is like certain aspects of it. So for Daybreak, for example, there was a team that did kind of the level layout and addressed, like what are the technical needs for destructible walls, for example, because that was a new piece of technology that we hadn't had in the game before, and so they had, the world building team was like the world building artists, and there was prop artists, and then the programmer who had to help add that technology, and designers to help figuring out the layout and stuff like that. So it's kind of a group of different disciplines, but they were doing that aspect of Daybreak. And then there was, a team that handled achievements and rewards and unlocks, like how you get more gear as you kind of progress. A person might be on multiple of those teams, like it might just be for the first quarter of development that we're doing, world building or whatever, and then, later in the process, the person who's on that team might be on a different team. And so there's a lot of flexibility. I think we move around a lot between different projects and different aspects of the projects. But yeah, and so for Daybreak, the stuff that Jeffrey's really good at, there wasn't that much of a need for in Daybreak. And so, he found other ones.
Yeah, I think he said he mainly just worked on like the red talent skills, and that's pretty much his main contribution to it. So
yeah, because Jeffrey's done an amazing work at all the traits. I don't even know what the number is now. It's probably like 1,200 traits or something we have in the game.
He said it was about that, yeah.
So he's done a great job of that. He's done some of the mission design and things like that too. Skills, putting together all the skills and things like that. And, in Daybreak, the only thing that was really in that category was the traits and skills for the red talent staff.
Right.
And then there were a few like recruitment missions and stuff like that in the base game, but didn't need that much from his side of the
No, I think that's a really good way to do it, though, the way that it's structured like that, because then you can kind of, okay, this project is done, now we can kind of shift some more people over this way. So I think that's a nice way to do it.
Yeah, and so, in the same sense, we were working on Z Hunter and exploring difficulty stuff at the same time. So there were programmers who were kind of on those two different teams, and we were also doing, kind of at the same time, we're also doing the bug fix releases for Daybreak, so like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. And so, for example, Sam, one of my coworkers, was spending a lot of time figuring out the audio bug that we were having for a while there. And
yeah, that was a pain for a while.
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. And once he, knocked that out of the park, he came over and he started working with me on some of that difficulty stuff.
And in terms of challenges for you, what would you say is like one of the bigger challenges for you? If you had to pick, this thing right here, this is kind of what makes it a bigger challenge for me.
Could you clarify a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, if you're going to program something into the game, what is a little bit harder for you to program? Like what is more challenging or takes more time for you to actually work around?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, it's always harder to change an existing system than it is to create a new one. If you're changing something that's already in the game, there's a lot of kind of consequence. Like, how does that affect the balance of the game, and how does that affect the testing of that feature? You're changing something that already worked, and you get verified that worked. How do you make sure that doesn't break when you do make a change to it? I think there's testing as a whole. Like, how do you make sure that the work you do is, like, you have confidence in how it works, and you have given the QA team the tools to make sure that it works the way it's intended, and communicate that to them. I think also anything that, in games, like we were talking about earlier, how you communicate with the player is a huge factor in their understanding of the system, and that can be really hard to make sure that you're communicating clearly and in appropriate amounts, because it's that thing where you get a pop-up and you just hit OK, because you always get that pop-up and you don't care, and you kind of like that
right.
decision fatigue,
through it, yeah,
or text fatigue that people can have. You want to make sure that you communicate things in a way that doesn't hit that doesn't drive you to just like, whatever, I don't care. You want to make sure that it's engaging. I think those are kind of like the hardest aspects of it. As far as like technical problems, like the difficulty of the technical aspects of it, there's not really a specific thing that stands out to me. Like, I really enjoy a challenging problem. I really enjoy something that's like a logic puzzle, basically. Like, how do I solve this from an intellectual perspective? I enjoy that a lot, and I think a lot of programmers do. It's just kind of part of why we do what we do. But I don't think that those aren't the hardest part of the job. Like, the hardest part of the job is how you create a good user experience and how you communicate it to the user. That is, like I said, QA, and it's how you communicate information, and how user interaction plays with your system.
That definitely makes sense, and it kind of makes me think of one of the examples that they, I think, talk about on a stream where someone, was mentioning, oh, I really want a fire station base, can you make a fire station base? And someone on the stream was saying, well, it's a little bit harder than it sounds to do that, because if we just popped a fire station base into a map, then that changes the balancing issues for the whole map.
Yeah. No, it's very true, right? Like, and there's a lot of expectations that are set into it. I think our mission system in some ways makes it really hard to test things, because our mission system is very general purpose, and so it's set up to kind of use a set of rules to when it wants to create a populated mission in the world. It uses a set of rules to find kind of what is an appropriate location for this. And the designers get to specify those rules, and they can be almost arbitrarily complex. And so, if you remove a building and put a new one in its place, you're suddenly you're changing how often those missions will occur, about the distribution of different missions. Because maybe some mission was looking for a house, like a residential house that was within 300 meters of a shed, and then you remove that shed when you put the fire station in there, and all of a sudden, now there's way less cases where we can populate the mission.
No, it definitely makes sense, and I can understand how that would, have a lot of balancing issues like that. So, if people want the fire station, it might have to wait for a potential new map, but we'll see what happens, I guess. So,
yep.
But if someone is, kind of thinking, oh, I kind of, like the stuff that he's describing here, and they kind of think that they might want to become a programmer, what would you suggest they do to, kind of get in the industry? Would they have to go, get a programming degree, or are there other things that they could do, or what would you say is the best course for them to take?
So, I don't have a degree. I went to college for programming, and then I went to the U.S. to study abroad for a year, and then dropped out and never came home. So I'm not going to say that that's a requirement. I'm not saying to not get a degree either. I think that I learned a lot of really valuable things in college, both from so let me step back for a second. I guess one of the things that I didn't talk about earlier, when we were talking about what kind of programming is and what that means. I was saying that it's about creating the building blocks of the video game. It's about giving the tools to the different disciplines to do what they need. But the thing that I don't think I emphasize strongly enough in that context is that to be able to do that, you need to be able to communicate with people, and that's I think a very commonly overlooked skill. I think that especially because programmers tend to be logically minded, I think that they appreciate kind of the purity of a single problem, where you don't have to consider kind of the implications of it other than from a technical perspective. I think that that's part of why it becomes an overlooked skill, but I think that empathy and communication, like being able to understand the problems that your users are having, that your coworkers are having, being able to talk to a designer or an artist about what their workflow is like, or what problems they're trying to solve, or being able to ask questions and understand, what they're asking for when they're asking for a tool or asking for a feature in the game. I think that is just an amazingly important skill. And so it's just, and I think that a lot of job listings too don't emphasize that aspect of it, where really it's people skills. It's being able to work with people and being able to think about what you're creating and who you're creating for. And so from the perspective of that, I think that working with people in any facility is going to help you, make it in game development. It doesn't really matter what you do, but as long as you try to work on your communication, try to work on your empathy, that's going to be a huge thing. As far as the programming aspect of it, I think that there's a lot of ways to get into that. These days there are like boot camp programs where you can kind of learn how to program, in a kind of intensive manner or less than a year.
Right. Or like online courses and things.
Yeah, there's online courses you can do on your own time. You can pick up a book or talk to somebody that that knows a program and have them teach you kind of the basics of it, get started, and then just spend a lot of time doing it. That's the approach that I took. I remember trying to learn the Java programming language when I was a kid, and I had a book. This is pretty early, so English is my second language, and so there was a part of the book that I got to that talked about the different math operators in Java, and it talked about the modulo operator, and I talked about the remainder of a division, and I didn't know what those words meant, and so eventually I had to just give up. I was just like, I can't. And I think a sane person would have just kept going and been like, it's fine, I don't have to learn this. But I was so obsessed about the fact that I did not understand this word that I put the whole book down, and I came back to it years later. But and so I think that there's lots of approaches to learning programming, and I think whatever fits best with where your life is. If you're a high school student, or a middle school student, or even a college student who's not studying programming, you can do this on your own time. You can start programming things, start making projects, but if you're choosing where to go to college, I think any kind of programming degree will serve you well. I don't think that there are schools that specialize in educating game developers, and there are pros and cons to those programs, but I don't. And I see a lot of those people in the workplace, but I don't think I see a lot of them because they're necessarily inherently better qualified for the jobs. It's just that if you're the kind of person who enrolls in a private school to learn how to make video games, it's because you really, really want to make video games, and so you're going to end up in the games industry. Because I just went to a general computer science and engineering degree, which I think people are better off going to in Europe, it would just be like a university, presumably where the tuition is paid for by the government, or if you're living in the U.S., you're in-state university that's just that has what's called like resident tuition or whatever. Like it's cheaper for you to go because you live in that state. Like those kinds of things are probably your best options if you're trying to choose what to do. And as you go through a degree like that, and kind of computer science or engineering degree, you can kind of pick classes that teach you things that are interesting to you and that might be relevant for programming. Like at UC San Diego, where I went, for example, they had multiple like graphics programming classes, which were super interesting to me. Yeah, and then I think the other. Go ahead.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of options now for people that maybe 20 years ago it was basically you have to do this or this, but it seems like now there's a lot of options for how you can actually get the experience.
Yeah, and I think experience is kind of the other part of it. When you're first learning how to program, I think it's common to be really ambitious. To be, you want to make your own game engine and design your own game and finish this game, and it's an MMO and it's online. 3D, and you have these grand visions, and I think that's a normal part of the process. And also, you're never going to do that because it's just a ridiculous amount of work. And so,
right.
I think part of learning to program and learning to be a good product developer, no matter what kind of products you're making, is learning through experience that you bit more than you can chew, right? Like what's the expression? Your eyes are bigger than your mouth. Is that your stomach? I don't know.
I think it's stomach. Yeah, I think so.
And so I think it's learning that and getting a sense for, what is realistic, and then just trying to make things on your own. If you have the privilege of having the time and resources to work on a game in your spare time, then I think that's a hugely helpful thing to do. It's really like being able to show that you created something on your own, that you got to shipping quality. Like it doesn't have to be the best thing ever. It doesn't have to be even a good thing. As long as it is a thing that is finished, that is hugely valuable to show.
Right, because it at least shows ambition. It at least shows that you want to do it. So
yeah, yep.
No, I think that's definitely helpful. So hopefully that helps anyone out there that is thinking about programming his career.
And I mean, if you have any questions, you can always tweet at me on Twitter. We can put my Twitter handle on the show notes, probably.
Absolutely, I'll do that for sure.
I'm happy to answer any questions about game development or programming or whatever, my opinions. I obviously am not going to answer any questions about unannounced Undead Labs projects.
Right, yes.
but I'm happy to talk to anyone, no matter how simple you think your question is or how dumb you think it is. I will not hesitate to answer your questions. So please do everything.
Yeah, that's the thing with questions too. I mean, there's really not many questions that are a dumb question because somebody out there else is wondering about it too, and they just didn't want to ask it. So.
Yep. Yeah, and you can send me a direct message or you can tweet at me. Either way, I'll get back to you.
But moving forward to Undead Labs, how did you actually get started with Undead Labs? So how did you transition your previous experience into your job now?
So that's an interesting question. Before I was at Undead Labs, I was at a company called Uber Entertainment. Briefly at a company called Hairbrain Schemes. And when I applied for my job at Uber Entertainment, I had also sent a job, an application to Undead Labs. But Undead Labs was in the middle of trying to ship a game, and so I didn't hear back from them until months later, at which point I'd already taken a job with Uber Entertainment. Yeah, it was an amusing thing. And then when I was at Uber Entertainment, and I started thinking about do I want to find a new job? Something that I feel is more suited to the kind of work I want to be doing right now. I went to a job fair, a career fair, as a recruiter. I was looking for candidates for Uber Entertainment, and I ran into Jeff Strain, who's the owner of Undead Labs, and I told him the amusing anecdote about how your name looks so familiar. Where do I know you from? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm the owner of Undead Labs. I'm like, Undead Labs? Oh yeah. I applied for a job there
awesome.
2 years ago, and And you guys came back to me like 4 months later, and he was very apologetic, and he was like, gave me his business card and stuff like that, and yeah, and so I applied for a job there, and it was amusing because I owned State of Decay 1 on PC, and I looked and I was like, I haven't played this game. Like, I'm applying for this job and I haven't played State of Decay. And I was like, why didn't I play it? Like, this looks like a game for me, and I own it. Like, it's in my Steam library. And then I looked at the date, and turns out that it came out on Steam just around the time that we were shipping Planetary Annihilation at Uber Entertainment, which was a very hectic time for me at work, and so I didn't have a whole lot of time, so I bought the game with the intention of playing it,
right.
And then I was like, I don't have time to play this game right now, and then I kind of forgot about it, and so my first experience after playing State of Decay was, I think I played it for like 20 hours a week before my interview, where I was like, and I really enjoyed the game. I have yet to get around to playing the expansion packs, amusingly enough, but yeah, I played the base game for like 20 hours, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, yeah, totally. I can see why I bought this game and why I wanted to play it, and this seems like a good time as I need to play it.
Yeah, it seems like a good thing to brush up on, right?
Yeah. And part of what interested me, I think, about Undead Labs was that I wanted to do, like, I've done a lot of systems and engine programming, and, having worked on a Linux graphics driver and working on porting games to Mac and Linux, like, it's been a lot of work that's pretty far removed from the user experience and what the players actually interact with on a daily basis. And so part of what I wanted to do when I got to Undead Labs was to kind of transition to doing more gameplay level things and more things that were directly kind of in front of the player when they were playing. And so that was kind of where I was coming from, and I really felt like that was something I got an opportunity to do. Work on a large title. It's only the second console title that I worked on, and the previous one I worked on was in Unity. So I was kind of excited to work on a console game. It's kind of difficult.
Yeah, I know myself. That's all I play on is console games, and it's not because I don't like PC games. It's just I can't afford to do PC games right now because I'd have to buy a whole rig and everything. So for me, I'm just going to stick to my console right now. But maybe eventually I'll try some PC games.
I think that the thing about affordability of consoles is interesting, because I think that it means that if you make a console game, you kind of reach a different audience than you do necessarily with a PC. Like a high-end gaming PC is thousands of dollars.
Right.
And you can get a Black Friday deal on an Xbox or whatever for $300 or something like that. So it's kind of a different price category. And the other part of it is, which comes from me as a programmer, it's a very fixed target. So if you're making a game for console, you know exactly what hardware they're going to be running your game on. You have very clear expectations for that. Which, from a player's perspective, it means that your rig is good for a longer time. People aren't constantly chasing a new piece of hardware that came out in your graphics card or whatever. So there's not that same upgrade cycle for it. But it also means that as a developer, I can feel more confident in the product that I'm shipping, because I know that you're going to run this on an Xbox. I know that you're going to run this on a PS4, you're going to run this on a Switch or whatever. But I have that exact piece of hardware that you're playing the game on. I have that sitting on my desk, and so I know exactly what it's going to be like. For PC, you can say whatever you want. Right? Yeah, but also as a developer, you can say whatever you want. You can say the minimum requirements are blah blah blah. This graphics card, this much memory, or whatever. But you can bet your ass that somebody's going to try to run this on a literal potato. They're going to shove that disc just right into a potato and hook up an HDMI cable, and they're just going to hope that it works, right? You have no control over that. And from a marketing perspective or whatever, you could be like, well, you don't meet the minimum requirements, but I don't want people to have that experience, right? I don't want people to have that. And I think the other part of it is that it's hard to set minimum requirements, because it's complicated, because there's a lot of different factors, right? Like, if you have a faster CPU but a slower GPU or whatever, like there are some settings you could turn down and some settings you could turn up, and like it's a very like it's like balancing act across the whole board. And like as your graphics quality goes up, you also need a faster hard drive to be able to stream the textures off of drive fast enough to be able to show them on screen. Like, there's a lot of different things that have like come together in a package, so you can't really express that very easily in minimum requirements, and so it's just, I don't know, like it's a very complicated problem to solve, and so consoles take away some of that guesswork.
That's definitely something I didn't really think about before, but now that you say that, I mean, it definitely makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that the problem is, kind of the same thing, like on the reverse side too, where somebody could have, a PC that they spent, $5,000 or more on, and they're expecting, a certain level, but the game isn't made to play at like the highest, level graphics that are available on the market. So like for them, it might be like, oh, this, this looks like crap because I have this like, top end graphics card that, no one else has. And it doesn't look like it actually performs on that card.
Yeah. And it's like part of it too is like, do you want to make the download size for everyone, 10 gigs bigger just because you want to include a higher quality resolution that like, 0.25% of your users will be able to show, right? Like it's very, it's complicated.
Right, that's definitely challenging, yeah. Well, I guess I'm glad that I'm on console and I don't have to think about those things, but unfortunately for you, you have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it is a lot more complex. I think if I was going to ever be, like, and the other part of it is, like, how much money do you want to make? Because the more platforms you support, the bigger your audience is and the more money you can make. So, it's not a simple, like, cut and dry thing. Like, as a programmer, my dream world would be to support a single console, not like even multiple consoles. But then you're like artificially limiting your audience, which is a different problem.
Well, I mean, now that Microsoft owns Undead Labs, I mean, you're almost in that boat where basically it's going to be on Xbox or PC now. So
I mean, that was always the case. So.
Right, but I mean, I guess there was always a chance that, if Microsoft didn't buy Undead Labs, that I guess there was always, a potential opportunity that would go somewhere else, but that does happen at times, so. But in terms of State of Decay 2, what would you say is your favorite aspect of the game, or what, draws you into the game that you really appreciated? Or even the first game, if you want to say something about the first game that you really enjoyed.
It's just a complicated question, because I think it's hard for me to sometimes separate my love for the features that I worked on from, my experience as a player. And also, I think that a lot of the time, like, the way I play the game is different from how our customers do. But, I'm a big fan of the co-op, even though that's not necessarily how I would play that game by myself. I played co-op most at the office, not so much at home. But I do like the co-op aspect of it because it kind of gives it more like lighthearted and goofy feeling almost. Because it's kind of a serious game in some ways. So it tries to kind of convey that post-apocalyptic feeling. And so, playing with friends, it's more like messing around in the apocalypse kind of feeling. It feels more like Shaun of the Dead, than
right.
Something more serious. I also really like the world art in our game. I really like the environmental storytelling, the kind of little camps you'll find, and the little, weird things on the walls, and signs of civilization as it has decayed. It really appeals to me. And
I definitely like that too.
And I think back to the topic we were mentioning earlier in terms of letting people tell their own stories. That applies to kind of very gamey systems like our food consumption stuff. That's very much like there's no connection between how much food you see somebody physically eating and how much food is consumed in a day, right? Like and it's not like you have 3 cans of food, you have 3 units of food, and so it's like it's kind of abstract, so it's very gamey. But there's other aspects of the game that I think are less gamey that still have a lot of that player-driven storytelling to it. And It's the trait system, like how we do our character generation and what stories you can tell about a character. I love telling stories about my own characters, and I love seeing people telling stories about their characters. I think on our Discord there's like it's a channel that's like
Share Your Stories, I believe it's called.
yeah, which is a channel I created actually, because I was super excited about the character generator results and seeing screenshots of like the combinations of traits you got. Since it's such a huge selection, there's such a they come together in such interesting ways that it's almost impossible to not look at that and be like, oh, this person was this kind of person, like this is what kind of character they are. Like this person was definitely a serial killer. They had a knife collection and they were super nocturnal and they used to work at a butcher shop, right? Like those three things don't mean that they were a serial killer, but you look at that and you're like, that's Dexter. Like I accidentally rolled Dexter, right? And so
right.
I love that. Like that's a really exciting aspect to me. I also worked on some of that, so that's part of why I'm saying it's hard for me to disconnect, like kind of pull apart the things that I worked on and was excited to work on, and the things that I enjoyed playing. But I think it really
that makes sense, though.
Adds a lot to it.
No, I definitely enjoy a lot of that too. I mean, and I enjoy the whole skills system and like how there's these different specializations that you can kind of customize your character based on how you want, and I enjoy that a lot. And one of the other things I enjoy a lot too that I've mentioned on previous podcasts is I enjoy a lot of the base management stuff that I know Brian does a lot with, and I think that's really cool how he actually worked all that out, with obviously the rest of the team, and made it so you can actually customize your base to, okay, my base is self-sufficient now, I'm getting everything I need and I don't have to worry anymore. Or if you don't want to do that, you can make it so, okay, I always have to go find food rucksacks, I'm not making enough food. Or there's different aspects of that you can actually customize the way you want.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a testament to my coworker Nico, who implemented a lot of the, if not all, of the base management stuff, both from the UI side of things, which is just a massive task. Like the UI for the base management is such a huge big UI, but also all the simulation aspects of it, and the way he kind of set that out all up to enable Brian, making the building blocks. Like he made these really powerful building blocks that allow Brian to do so many interesting things with that system that I think it really adds something. And I think that's part of it too, is that as we're working on like finding options for making the game more challenging, I think we're gonna find that we're able to convince the players to use some of these systems more. I think that like your decisions around base management and how you build your base are going to be more important if the challenge is greater, right? If it's the difference between life and death, whether or not you have a good or shitty base layout, right? Like then you're going to spend more time interacting with that system and thinking more about those decisions.
Right, I definitely love that too. And I know in one of the previous patches that was released, there was actually a change that kind of incorporated some of that, where basically if you have high morale in your base now, then all the random events that you lose, we knocked over a can of food, you lost one food today, all those random events shouldn't happen anymore when you have high morale. And I like that because it basically makes it so if you have high morale in your base, you shouldn't be losing this extra stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's something that like this is going to happen naturally as there are more challenging ways to play, that you're going to find that these systems will have more impact and be more you're going to have to engage with them more, which I think is just good. It shows off more aspects of the game.
No, I agree, and I really love all those aspects. And one of those aspects that we mentioned earlier is the new Zed Hunter stuff, and I'm definitely excited for all that. I mean, I know you said that you didn't have a lot of involvement in it, but what things did you work on directly, if you did work on it?
Mostly just play tested. I just gave it a spin. When they were asking for feedback, we were trying to figure out how the consumables were going to work, the new consumables we've added, and testing how using a crossbow field and how it feels in multiplayer versus single player. What do you need to feel like you can aim properly, and kind of giving feedback on all that. Some in terms of just like advisory capacities on like what is the scope of some of the work that we need to do, helping guide the process so that we were sure that we could finish everything. I'm sure I did like some bug fixing and things like that, but I don't think, I'm trying to remember, but I don't think there was anything that I kind of directly
directly was involved with.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's cool though, that you actually got to, provide your feedback still and, help shape that. But like one of the things in that I'll ask you about specifically, say like the ZI consumable that, makes it so you can see it in dark. Is something like that actually hard to do in terms of your role? I'm not sure who actually did it since you didn't do it, but in terms of like actually programming that into the game, is that something that's a little bit more challenging because you have like different lighting options there where you have to change the whole lighting? So is that more difficult, or is that something that's fairly easy to?
Yeah, no, I think it was actually on the more challenging side of things because you're.
Yeah, I thought it might be. So
we've spent a lot of time, and especially from the perspective of like our lighting artist, Matt, we've spent a lot of time kind of on what the game looks like in different lighting conditions, different times of day. I remember early in the process, we had some, like we were making the game, we had some kind of lighting conditions that were pretty bad. Like it was really hard to navigate at night or things like that. And so we spent a lot of time tweaking that and getting to where we are right now. And then when you're, the way kind of Jedi consumable works, it does change the entire kind of visibility of the world, but you don't want it to look like it's daytime. You still want to make it feel like it's nighttime, and so then you kind of have to adjust that. From a technical perspective, there was definitely some challenges I think there, but I think that a lot of it too just came down to Matt and how do we kind of sell like the experience, like we make it feel right, like it still feels like it's night, but you still feel like you have the visibility of daytime.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously haven't tested out myself yet because we're recording this on a Thursday and it doesn't come out till tomorrow. But from what I've seen on the two streams that have showcased it, both the Microsoft Studio stream and the Undead Labs stream yesterday, I think it looks great. And I think, the way it was actually put together is awesome because it really makes it feel like you're having, night vision goggles on. Oh, look, this glows in the dark now. And that's kind of how it feels. So I think it, definitely was done very well.
Yeah, and I guess part of it too is that you're because of how they're themed, right? You're kind of trying to sell like what does the world look like from the perspective of a zombie, right? Like that's kind of.
I did think of that too. Yeah.
It's not that explicit. Like it's not kind of exactly what it is, but it is. It is an item that's crafted from literally parts of zombies, blood plague zombies, right? And so when you call it Zedi kind of part of the player experience, it's going to be like, what does it look like when a zombie looks out in the dark? And so it really does a great job of selling.
No, I agree, and I'm definitely excited to try it out. When people hear this, it's already going to have been out for a couple of days, but I'm excited to try it tomorrow for me. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Can't wait to hear what you think of it.
I'll definitely cover it. Yeah, I mean, the episode after this, the Saturday episode after this, I'll probably be talking something about Zed Hunter. We'll see what topic I choose, but. Yeah, it'll probably be something about it. So, but kind of one of the final questions I had for you is sort of what feedback is kind of most important to you as a programmer? Is it like just bug reports is important, or is it like just general strategy feedback for you, or what kind of feedback helps you the most in your job?
It's a good question. I think it depends on what I'm working on, but and I think that the way this varies from studio to studio, but especially the smaller studios. Everybody has a bit of responsibility for the design of the game. And if you go to maybe a 500-person studio or whatever, I think that goes down. Your role is more narrower, and you just kind of focus on the technical aspects of your work, which is not something that appeals to me a whole lot. I really like being able to influence the design of the game and be able to participate in how we craft that experience. And I think that, like if you're, when I read, I tend to read the State of Decay Reddit because I really like to see what the community is talking about. And I've from a channel like that where it's not that easy to have a back and forth conversation because you don't even know if that person's going to respond to your message. Right? Like you can post a comment, but you don't know if you're ever going to hear back. I've both had bug reports where I was like, oh, dang, we need to fix that. That's real bad. And I've had feedback on experiences where people are like, this is working this way and it's really frustrating, or it doesn't do what I expect it to do, or it annoys me that it does what it does. And as well as like feature requests where people are like, oh, I wish I could do this thing. So all three of those are very helpful, But like the first one that's a technical problem. That's like it's very cut and dry whether or not that is doing what it's expected to do. And then there's
Right.
like the question of a frustrating experience, and you're like, okay, there's something wrong with the design here. I think for bug reports, I can most of the time just go in and fix it myself. Not most of the time, but a lot of the time I can just go in and fix it myself without needing to talk to necessarily anyone else. But when you're talking about more things that are like the experience is frustrating, and we have to talk about like how do we want to fix that. I might want to talk to a UX, like a user interaction specialist, or I want to talk to a person in QA who spends a lot of time playing a game, or I want to talk to a designer about like how do we most best address this. And then there's the feature request side of things, which is harder, I think, because feature requests tend to be less grounded in reality, I guess, is
Right.
is a way to
I can
phrase it.
understand that, yeah.
People have a lot of pie in the sky ideas that I really appreciate reading it. I think it's really exciting to see how much people care about our game, and how much they want to be a part of helping that game succeed and be the best it can be. But they don't have, well, a lot of people have a good understanding of the production process of a video game and what's involved in making certain things. But there was definitely, I saw a Reddit post, and if it ends up actually shipping, I'll respond to that person on Reddit. But I saw a Reddit post about somebody who was asking, like, they had like an idea for a game. And I read it and I was like, I don't think we're ever going to make that game. Like, it's not going to happen. But I think that this particular mechanic would be a really interesting way to increase the difficulty in the game. And so that's currently on one of our tracking boards as like, here's an idea for how to increase the difficulty of the game, and it's being considered as one of the tools we might use to do that. And so if that was a great idea that I read, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that is so cool! Like that, I really want that to be a part of our game. It will not be a game mode like you're suggesting, because that's just not doesn't have enough game to it. Like, it doesn't actually change the game in significant enough ways, but it does make the game more challenging and interesting. And I would love to, like, if you do, I'm very specifically not saying what it is because I don't want to
Right, obviously, yeah.
reveal anything.
I understand that.
But if it does ship, I made a note of that person's Reddit comment in a text document, and I'm going to go to Reddit, I'm going to post a comment on there and be like, hey, you suggested this thing, we did some variant of this, and it's coming out in this update. Because it's great to see that kind of enthusiasm and I want to encourage people to be excited about our game, just like we are.
No, that's really cool though, and I definitely appreciate that as well. But I mean, that's basically all the questions I had for you. Unless you have anything else about programming you want to mention real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to encourage anyone who's listening to consider a career as a programmer, especially in the games industry, especially if you're not a white dude. I think that it's really, I think of games as kind of like the most viscerally engaging format of entertainment that we have, right? Because of the interactive nature of video games, it just has this hook for people to have such extremely heartfelt reactions to it. And it could be, everything from like you throwing your controller at the wall because you were playing Call of Duty, some guy was spawn camping you or whatever. It's not necessarily a good experience that you want to encourage in your game, but the truth is that it was a game that was able to provoke that reaction from you, which is a huge spectrum. Like, I don't think anyone has ever seen a movie, or if maybe people have, but it happens so frequently. I've never seen, people talk about how they threw the DVD at the wall after they watched a movie, right? Like, that's not a thing that happens. And so I think that being able to be a part of that process from whatever perspective, whatever your talents are, is so rewarding because yes, there's a chance that people are going to yell at you on the internet and call you names. But then you also have communities like State of Decay 2 subreddit where people have really passionate feelings about your game, where they talk about the things they love about it and what they wish was better. And it's all, it's mostly all done in the spirit of, affection and passion about that product. I feel really excited and lucky to be able to be a part of that.
Absolutely, and I definitely appreciate all the work that you do and everyone else at Undead Labs as well. So, thank you for coming on, and I will definitely put your information in the show notes. I believe your Twitter is Jorgen PT. So I'll put that in the show notes. And if people want to contact me, then you might already know how to do it. But if not, basically at Blaise XPerience. That is going to be capital BLAISE, capital XPerience. If you want to email me, it's theblaisexperience@gmail.com. And I also have my Discord, YouTube, and Facebook group, so that'll all be in the show notes as well if you want to check that out. But Jorgen, I definitely thank you for coming on with me today. And is there any other ways that people can contact you besides Twitter, or do you want them to contact you on Twitter?
I think Twitter is the best way. If you need to have a long conversation, I can send you my email address. But yeah, just send me a direct message or a tweet at JORGENPT.
And I know you have your Twitch as well. I don't know how often you're going to be streaming, but if people want to check you out on Twitch, I'll put that on there as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
And for anyone that wants to check out the podcast, basically we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Blueberry, Podbean, and many other directories. So definitely check us out. Give us a review. And I really appreciate everyone checking us out for this special 50th episode. So thank you once again, Jorgen, for coming on. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And, thank you for everyone who's listening.
Absolutely. And, thank you to the listeners. We really appreciate it. So thank you once again for listening to the Blaise XPerience.